Started.
Welcome back. And this week I am joined by the fabulous Tina Eloise. She's an inner wealth witch and works with the embodiment, expression, and empowerment of the feminine. Tina, over to you to explain all of those wonderful words.
Well, thanks for having me, Jordan. I'm really stoked to be on this podcast with you and to be talking all the things that we're going to be talking about today. So as Jordan said, I work with feminine empowerment, expression, and embodiment. And what that means is helping women reclaim parts of themselves that they have shunned, that they have silenced, that they have shamed in order to be loved and accepted throughout their lives, which is a lot to do with conditioning, and helping them release that and turn that into fuel of their sexual, creative, and professional expression, so they can start creating the life that they truly desire and show up more boldly and unapologetically and wildly, unbridled, and just making money the way that they truly want to fucking make money. There goes the first swear word.
Yes, the permission for the F-bombs has been given, and here we go.
I thought, do you know what? I was like, well, normally I don't swear when people tell me I can swear, and then within 2 minutes, I'm like,
we're there. If anybody doesn't like the odd F-bomb, then I think either of us are probably not the right people.
yeah.
What I did love in there that you said was obviously clearing the shame and using all of that as fuel, and the word unbridled. I mean, the freedom from that is just amazing.
It's all about liberating that woman within, right? Because we're so used to walking around in masks, and it doesn't matter where you're from in society, you are conditioned in some way to show up as a certain way as a woman, right? And I think the thread of it is to be silenced, like don't be too much and know your place, and don't be too emotional. So I'm really big on expressing those emotions, the anger and the rage, and the pleasure and the eros of it all. So women hold so much shame around their bodies, around their sexuality and their emotions. So I know for me, I was always told that I was too loud, I was too much. I was told I was angry all the time as a child. I'm like, well, yeah, because you're not fucking listening to me. Someone listen to me. So, and I grew up thinking that my voice didn't mean anything. So, and also I've got a voice that projects anyway. So people often think that I'm shouting when I'm not. So I've just got this voice that projects. So obviously I was created to be heard. I wouldn't have the voice that I've got. I didn't find that out until later down the line, obviously, but
And I was thinking, actually, I was so much the opposite, not in terms of the emotions, in terms of the voice. I mean, people think I'm quiet now. They should have seen me 20 years ago. Because I really did have a quiet voice.
I didn't understand that.
And that's my phone deciding that I really do have a quiet voice.
Yeah, so the phone was chiming in there. Yeah, no, I didn't understand that. Do you want to speak a bit louder?
I've never done that before. So I had this quiet voice, but like you were saying as well, I was always told I was emotional. It was, if I was upset, it's what are you crying for? If I felt angry, it was don't get angry. And actually in my 20s, I was so angry. And I've spoken about before on other podcasts that I was so lucky. Actually, part of the thing that helped me was I got into security work. And by doing that, I also connected with guys that boxed and kickboxed.
Yeah.
And that's how I found a way to actually release so much of the anger, whether it's on the punch bag or whether it was on some poor person being thrown out. So sorry to all those guys that I headlocked and threw out fire exits. But they did help me. But I know that obviously you work with women. You've already started to talk about the anger, and you work with women to be able to express that anger in a different way.
Yeah. I mean, our rage is, you know, I mean, if it's unhealed trauma, then it can be quite destructive in our lives. For me, I used to lash out. I'd go into blind fury, especially if I'd had a drink. If someone come into my space, threaten me in any way, that was it. I would flip and I'd hurt people, which I'm not proud of. You know, I'd lash out and I'd actually to get them away from me. And then I'd come to and I'd be so remorseful. They've obviously hit me as well. It's not like me just pounding someone for the sake of pounding them, but I'd be so remorseful because I didn't know where it come from. But I had so much rage in me because I was never heard as a child, and I just felt threatened, so I'd lash out. And then the other side of that is that I used to suppress it as well. Like I would drink and take drugs and all that kind of stuff. And then going on this journey of healing I just put my whole life in a nutshell there. My whole 45 years in a nutshell. But going on this journey for the last 10 years of healing, I got to a stage where I could still feel that anger within me because I stopped the drinking, I stopped taking drugs and all that kind of stuff. But I still had this rage and I was like, how am I going to get rid of it? How am I going to get rid of this rage? And then the one day I was sat at my mum's, I was living back at my mum's at the time, which is where a lot of the abuse happened as a child. And my mum wasn't the best mum in my younger years due to alcoholism. And I was just sat in the room and I'm like, I've got all this rage. So I was just like, I need to get it out of me. So I started journaling and I was saying all these nasty things to my mother on this sheet of paper, calling her all the names under the sun. And I was feel the anger. I'm like, how am I going to let this out of me? And then I just got a pillow and just screamed into it and just started bashing this pillow, like, just letting it all out of my system. And then I felt like I was my teenage self again, like I wasn't at angst and I was just letting it all out. And then I was just like, what do I need to do now? And it was just like, I need to move my body. So I put on some music that I used to listen to as a teenager, because that was when all the anger started in my teenage years. And I just started dancing around the room and letting it all move out of my body. And then I come back to wholeness again with some breath work and all that. And that was the first time I learned how to process my rage in a more empowering, controlled manner, in a more positive manner. And then that turned into purpose and passion. And the more that I kind of dived into it, I realized that your rage is on the same spectrum as what your passion's on. You can't feel passion and joy and euphoria and all those kind of higher vibrational, like what they say, higher frequency emotions, if you don't allow yourself to feel the heavier ones, because that's where your gold is, right? And when I uncovered all of that rage, when I started working through all of that rage, I found guilt, sorrow, you know, because the rage was just covering up the sorrow of the life the childhood I never had, the mother and the father that I never had and that I truly wanted. And I shamed myself for that, because obviously there's stuff in there to unpack, because I felt that I wasn't good enough to love because they didn't love me. Oh, well, I thought they didn't love me. I realized down the line that they love me in their own fucked up way in some way. Do you know what I mean? But, and then, and once you start working with your rage, it then turns into a sacred rage, and you can use that for you can turn it into passion for anything that you're putting out in the world. Like it can be activism or creating change or your purpose work in some way, you know. It can really be the fuel to ignite huge transformations, not only in your own life, but also in the life of others, and on this and in the planet, and social change and all that kind of stuff as well. So it can be, when used healthfully, your rage, as I said, can be a huge motivator and propel you forward.
I absolutely love that. And it brought to mind for me when I was working with the young people, and quite often in the crisis assessments, how many of them would come with anger. And that would be one of the things on their plan, that this wasn't just a, go and breathe, meditate and move. It was find a way to be able to express this, because you've got to get it moving through your body and out your body before you can do the rest of this. And so it was finding creative ways of being able to do that. And I remember one suggestion from a parent. They were like, well, we've got crockery in the back garden and we've got a baseball bat. I was like, fabulous. I can't recommend that for health and safety purposes, but amazing. And also being able to start the conversations with the teenagers, because as you said, and the same for me, my anger started in my teenage years and I didn't know what to do with it. So being given that permission makes such a difference.
But that's the thing, there's so much shame around anger as well. Also, women are not meant to feel angry. It's meant to be a man's thing, you know. And there's the men out there now are angry. You know, there's just like the women are, but they're more of an overt angry because they're not getting heard and seen in a way either. Do you know what I mean? So and with you, when you're a teenager, you've got all the hormones going on in the world, and I believe once you get to be a certain age as a teenager, the damage is already done. Like if you've had like the damage is already done in those first 7 years, then leading up to your teenager, the damage is done. So if you work as a teenager on through the rest of your life, trying to undo what the first 11 years has done to you, do you know what I mean? Trying to navigate the world or the beliefs and the systems that you've had been put into your mind from those younger years. And as a teenager, I felt the least loved. So that's like one of the questions that I ask my clients sometimes when they come to me and they're not sure what's going on with them or whatever. And I'm just like, well, at what age did you feel the least loved? Because you become angry at the world then, because you feel like no one loves you, or, you know, you start seeing the world in it. Although it's quite a small world, you're with your peers, you see a bigger landscape when you're a teenager, because you're before going out into the world and, you know, making a career and all that kind of stuff. It's a different kind of landscape than when you're in that family unit. So that question I often ask my clients. And the surprising thing is, you know, I have clients that are like, oh no, I came from an amazing kind of childhood. You know, mummy and daddy were amazing. I was daddy's little girl. And I was just like, that's fine. There's no guilt in saying that you didn't feel loved at some point, because there's guilt there, isn't there? You don't want to piss off mum and dad, no matter how horrible they were. You feel that guilt of working through these horrible emotions and having them towards people that you love. So you don't want to admit it to yourself that you might have these emotions about them. So there was one client and she was like, oh no. And I was like, it's all right, you can say it. And she was just like, okay, well, the first thing that comes to your mind. And it was her bringing home a picture of a dog when she was a kid, and her mum, dad and brothers were in the kitchen. She's running the door. Oh, can you put this on the fridge? And her mum's like, yeah, all right, love, you go upstairs and get your coat off or whatever. And as she was walking upstairs, she heard her mum go, that is not going on my fridge. And her dad turn around and say, it looks like a penis. She'd done a pink dog, and she said, oh, in all fairness, it looked like a penis. She goes, and I look back at it now. She goes, but yeah, I decided then that I decided then that dad didn't love me if I was to show him or ask him for anything. And this affected her business as well, because she wouldn't show up. She wouldn't ask men. Like, she was in a bit of a turmoil in her business, and she had all these invoices that needed to be paid from others, right? So she had all this outstanding money that was owed to her. And we discovered that she didn't like being forceful with men, like male clients, to ask them for the cash.
Yeah.
And it was all stemming from that moment way back in her childhood that she'd forgotten about. And so we went through emotion. I was just like, what would you like to say to your dad now? She's like, oh no, I don't, you know, she goes, me and my dad are fine. And we were, you know, she goes, he was always there for me. My dad was amazing. Like, I was his little girl. She had big brothers, and, you know, that kind of environment she was brought up in. And mum we had a part-time job, and she'd done all the housework and cooked dinner, and like real family kind of thing, you know. And I was like, no, what do you want to say to your dad? What would that little girl really wanted to go down there and say to him? And she was like, it wasn't the rage that, you know, I go through with the sacred scream, but it was rage where she stamped her feet and she was like, listen, dad, So that's like the voices of power, and allowing yourself to say the things that you needed to say back then, and be the advocate for yourself that you needed back then, to tell your parents that they were wrong in allowing to what happened. Although their parents were just didn't know that she was in the room or even heard it, they done damage to her that leaded to, you know, her business nearly going down the toilet later in life.
And that bit about being an advocate for yourself, because that's such a significant piece of work. I know with my clients, we do, when we're doing that inner child and back history work, it is that being able to go back and say what you wanted to say and hear what you, well, not even wanted, needed to hear. All of that work is so pivotal in being able to shift. And like you said, with the business, the impacts that something as, in a lot of ways, insignificant as a flippant comment about a picture at however old.
She was 7, 8 years of age.
Can have all those years later. And I have heard it. I've heard it from other people where they say exactly what your client was saying, but I had a nice childhood. There wasn't anything. And then there just might have been one throwaway comment, whether it was parents or teacher. Around that 6, 7, it was a throwaway comment, and somehow that has just rippled through.
Yeah. Because up to that moment, she'd always felt really loved by her. She was daddy's little girl, you know, and her brothers always protected, and she felt unsafe to be herself in that moment by that comment. It's just amazing. And that was one of the client journeys that blew my mind. I was just like, look how easy it is to fuck your kids up. You know what I mean? You don't need to go through a really shitty childhood for stuff to matter. And you know, she kept putting up with really bad behavior from men all through her life because of that one comment. She either put up with really bad behavior, or she had ridiculously high standards that she held them to because of her dad, because of the way her dad was with her mum and all that kind of stuff. So it was never an in-between, but she always felt like she didn't have a voice to, she didn't let them in, or she let them in and let them take the piss. So, you know, so not only did we help with her business, it also helped her show up differently in her relationship and put some boundaries in place, which really changed her relationship as well. So yeah, this is one of my star stories.
It's such an amazing example of that. I don't particularly like the big T, little t for trauma, but it's probably an easy way of understanding it. It doesn't have to be those big T traumas. It doesn't have to be abuse. It doesn't have to be violence. Actually, those small, potentially we would look back and go insignificant, can have the ripple effects and the after effects just as much as those big. I was going to say, it depends how it affects us. It's not about the actual incident or incidents, it's how it affects us. And I think the whole thing of talking about trauma, and so with that there's anger and rage and how it's dealt with. And you know, so many therapists have been talking therapists, so we haven't been dealing with the embodiment, we haven't been dealing with how that emotion affects you in your body and how it affects you in showing up every day.
Well, it affects every area of your life, doesn't it? And there was something I was going to say there about, we were talking about, you know, what you say to them, and you're expressing what you expressing what you needed to hear and what you said. By doing that, you're helping yourself being expressed, right? Because by not saying the things that you needed to say, or not having the advocacy that you needed as a child, and being reliant on familial support to survive, we suppress our words. So by doing this work and facing your anger and allowing yourself to say the words that you needed to say, even though you love your parents or whatever it might be, you become more fiercely expressed. Do you know what I mean? You just take away the shame or the fear of speaking your truth, because ultimately it comes down to the reason that you don't say the things that you needed to say is because there's a fear that you're going to be abandoned, you're not going to be loved. And that's all it comes down to, being loved and not being loved, because we all have this inherent fear that we're going to be not loved. Do you know what I mean? We all want to be loved. It's in our DNA to want to be loved. And when people don't love you, it's not the end of the world. Do you know what I mean? But this is where rejection, sensitivity, and all that kind of stuff, abandonment issues. Oh God, there goes the cat. Abandonment issues, and relating styles, and all that kind of stuff comes into it. Because it's just very loaded, isn't it? There's just so much from going back to what you were saying. Just one little instant can change the trajectory of your life and how you feel about yourself and how you relate in the world. Get off the laptop. Sorry.
That's all right. He just wants to be part of the podcast.
Yeah, he just wants to be part. It's coming up to his dinner time, so he's just like, sorry, I heard him come in, so I got a bit distracted there. I was like, where's the cat gonna go? So I think I might have gone off somewhere where I wasn't supposed to go off to. But
no, yeah. You were talking about being able to have a voice, say what we needed to say, and actually being able to work on that, and then the impact it has on us. And I really think when I see people say, I want to work on my relationship or relationships, no, work on yourself.
Yeah.
Like, go back, look at yourself, because when you start doing that work, you will be able to see, how am I interacting? How am I relating? Where are my boundaries? And I think the other bit that actually I did want to say was love it. Just having a cat walking back and forth.
I'm gonna have to hold him, otherwise he's gonna be sorry.
No, that's fine. What I was thinking was, where we're talking about parents, we can do this work and still love our parents. We can forgive our parents for whatever they did at the time, especially when it was where they thought they were doing the best, and still love them. We can forgive ourselves for everything that happened afterwards and still love them. This isn't about taking that away, but it is about working through the effects of it.
Yeah. I mean, I was working through it, especially the mother wound side of it, because I work with like the core wounds, like mother, sister, witch, bitch, and whore. And I was working through it. Mum was at work, and I'm there raging out, calling her all the CUNTs under the sun, and saying some really horrible things to her through the healing process and the expression, the voice of power, and all that kind of stuff. And then I'm sitting down having dinner with her, and so the emotions of that was really having to navigate that the way I was feeling about her in that moment in time, in terms of our relationship there and then, and how I also felt about her way back when we were kids, and where she wasn't there for me, and she was complete useless in mothering. It was just like, it was a lot for me to balance and deal with and navigate. But on the back of that, I'm not a big person that subscribes to the train of thought that, oh, you've got to have a conversation with them. And, at the time I was like, I'm not going to hear anything. Mum's going to get defensive. She's going to go, do you know what I mean? And there's a very beautiful moment came of it. Like, I didn't open up the conversation about my childhood. We just naturally sat there, we're having a cup of tea and a bit of cake or something come on the telly, and it was air stewardesses on there, and Mum goes, oh, I wanted to be one of them one day. When I was younger, I wanted to be one of them. And I was like, oh, did you? What happened? And she relayed a story about my nan going to prison when she was young. And she goes, I was never the same again. Life happens. And I was never the same again. And then in that moment, Mum's never been that open. She's never spoke about her past when she's been sober. And you could see the weight of it on her. Like, and I was just looked at her, and something just really shifted in me. And I was just like, that woman was a child when she was bringing me up, even though she was in her 20s, but she was still locked in that moment. still to this day, she's probably still locked in that moment of feeling abandoned and unloved, and like we all are. That's our emotional response, right? So we go back to that moment we feel least loved, if we feel threatened, or our emotional response to anything really, and we go back to those predetermined kind of responses to anything. So whether that's like if you're going to fawn or fight or flight or whatever it is. But yeah, and I just realized then that, and it was so much compassion that filled me that wasn't there before for her. Even though everything that what she did was wrong, what she allowed to happen was wrong, it was wrong on all so many levels. In that moment, I was like, I don't need anything from her. Do you know what I mean? There was nothing that I needed from her. And I just saw, and it just gelled our relationship that it is now so much more than it was ever before, because I was estranged from them for nearly 15 years. Like, I barely saw my mum and my sister because I was just like, I need to get away from it. So yeah, so it was just a beautiful moment. And I didn't need to have a sit down with her and have a big massive conversation with her about why she fucked me over as a child. Do you know what I mean? So I'm like, I think she knows. Do you know what I mean? She was there, she knows. All I'm going to get from her is denial, and I've done that because what happened to me as a child, and it's just she's going to be on the defense, and there's no point of talking to someone they're not on the same level. If you're healing, I mean, obviously you say no to bad behavior, but you don't need to go over rehash old shit. Well, to me, I was like, I don't need to rehash old shit with someone that's not on a healing journey, it's not self-aware. Basically, I don't need to, there's no rhyme or reason as to why it happened. It happened because she couldn't handle life and handle having a child. But I think you have to go a certain way down the healing journey to be able to have that realization, because there's still anger, and people, I think a lot of it comes from, I'm going to talk to her, I'm going to tell her. And I think some people need to go through that and stand up for themselves. But all throughout my life, I never had any dramas telling my mum that she was a shit mum. Like, it wasn't a new thing for me to say to her. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're a shit mother. Don't know why I have anything to do with you, and then storm out. That was the kind of child, that was the kind of teenager I was. I was just like, you're fucking shit. I hate you. So
the problem as well with those, well, it's those conversations, is there's an expectation, you were saying it, that they are going to come back and they're going to say everything that you would love them to say,
exactly
in the way you would love them to say it. And when that doesn't come back, actually, rather than that being a healing process, that can add more guilt, more shame, more hurt.
Yes.
And actually undo, depending on how far down your healing journey you are, it can actually undo so much of that work.
Yeah.
Because it's that, again, we're back in that one scenario, throw away from the person you're trying to heal from.
Yeah.
Not with.
Yeah.
I'm all for, write letters, write forgiveness letters, write gratitude letters. If something is, or feels rather, that you really want to send it, word it in a way that you're owning everything, and then you're sending it and you're asking for nothing in return.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you're walking in and have those expectations that you're going to get something back exactly as you need it or hope for, it's really unlikely to happen.
Yeah, exactly that. It gives you the wrong, I think a lot of people going in with the wrong expectations, and then they get nothing in return, which is basically you're re-traumatizing yourself, the same fucking wounds that you would that you were trying to heal from. Like, you just opened it up again. Like, relying on someone that is not on a healing journey, who's not self-aware, who's basically on the same emotional landscape they were when all this kind of stuff maybe have happened to you, and expecting a different result from them is a different reaction. I mean, maybe it happens once in a blue moon, but I think more often than not, it probably doesn't. And as you said, it's re-traumatizing. Like, why would you want to put yourself into that position and give your power away in that way when you've worked so hard to claim it back? And one thing that I've learned on this journey is that you have to learn to reparent yourself and build those rock solid foundations of emotional stability. So when you do get a trigger, you can check in with yourself and wait to respond. instead of, you know, going into that kind of state where, you know, I used to go into fight. That was the whole thing with the anger. Now when I'm triggered, I go into a more fawn response. Like I kind of want to, not fawn. What's the other one? Flight response. Freeze. No, it's flight. When I want to run away, I want to run away. I want to hide. It's not for me. And when I go into that kind of response, I recognize it now, even though it's quite subtle. Sometimes it's not even a bloody pang in the, you know, when you feel it in your body. Sometimes it's like, oh, why am I wanting to go run and hide? Sometimes it's just, I've just had enough. I just need to hide away for a little bit. But then sometimes it's like because I've been triggered by something and I didn't realize, because I was so disassociated from my body. And one thing about doing all this work with feeling and all that, it reattaches you to your body and it allows you to, you know, bring your body keeps score at the end of the day. So allowing yourself to have a relationship with your body. And that's been the biggest parenting thing for me, because I realized the things that I felt and thought about my body was exactly the same way that I used to talk and feel about my mum, that it was useless. And that it was one of the layers, one of the layers, that it was useless. It's always letting me down. It doesn't support me. And I think we go through a lot of life saying that about our bodies, like fucking headaches. Oh my God, I broke my leg. Or do you know what I mean? It's not this. The reason your body's all this stuff's happening in your body is because it's screaming out to you to look like you did as a teenager. It's just like, look, listen to me. Like, someone listen to me. Like, and that's what happens, you know, when you're sitting on anger and all these kind of heavy emotions and you're not expressing them, it causes disease and disharmony in the body and causes illness and all that kind of stuff and mental health issues and all that. So I think I've gone on a roundabout here again. So I think, you know, what we were saying about expressing and reparenting ourselves and learning ourselves to express what we need to express, maybe to ourselves through letters or, you know, gratitude and all that kind of stuff is powerful work.
It's huge work. And you reminded me of a couple of things when you were talking. And one was an exercise from Martha Beck, which is writing a letter to your mum, starting it with a dear mum, and then when you finish the letter, crossing out mum and writing your name. And that's such a powerful exercise to truly start to look at yourself.
Kind of parts work, isn't it? Like what is it? Internal family systems. Yeah.
And the other bit that you got me thinking about, in terms of the embodiment and the emotions, is somewhere along the line, it feels to me anyway, that we've lost what is normal, for want of a better word, there isn't another one, emotion compared to emotional health needs and their mental health. And I do feel that sometimes just those normal ups and downs are misinterpreted, that actually we can feel down. And we can feel down for more than a few hours, but that doesn't make us depressed.
No.
But it is being used to that wave of emotions that would be expected in anybody.
I mean, what goes up must come down. Like, it's physics, isn't it? Like, seriously, you're not going to feel like the euphoria, the joy. Like, sometimes I'm just like, when I was going through my mental health episodes, I'm like, I'm sure I'm bipolar, because 1 minute I'm up there like manic, quite manic, and the next minute I'm down. And it was like a thing of polarity. My mum was bipolar. Well, it was called manic depression as well. So I was brought up in that environment where 1 minute it was just manic and the next minute it was like subdued and she's wanting to kill herself kind of thing. So that was my kind of the emotional scale that I became accustomed to. It was like all out or all in, all out or all in. And then doing this work, I've realized that, as you said, allowing myself, not making myself wrong to be feeling any of these, like, you know, like society might be telling me that I need to be out right now. Like maybe if you're going to a job or, you know, showing up online or whatever, you need to be out, you need to be bubbly, you need to be social and all that kind of stuff. And when, you know, and when the times I didn't feel like it, I made myself feel bad about it. Do you know what I mean? When I felt a bit low or a bit down, I was like, something's wrong with me, I'm fucked up, or do you know what I mean? And then doing this work and getting to know my emotions that were trapped in my body and the emotional scale, because there's a very vast scale. There's like 100 emotions that we can feel. I don't know, 84 or something. And getting to know the emotional scale and working through and expressing my emotions in a very healthy and empowering way has closed that gap of the polarity that I used to go through with my own emotions. One minute I was up there and the next minute I was down there, and it's kind of closed the gap. And now I've just really kind of, I just ride the wave, and I've learned how to not attach meaning to them.
Yes.
They are emotions. We're emotional beings. We allow them to wash through. If there's any meaning that's coming from them, then I will know about it, but I'm not making it mean and going on those kind of shame spirals and stories that I like to tell myself about when I'm feeling this way. That means this about me. Do you know what I mean?
What am I making it mean? Is that such a huge, powerful question,
Yes.
Especially referring back to when you were talking about being triggered. So in that moment of whatever it is that has triggered you, that what am I making it mean? And also, when am I, thanks Colette Baron Reid for that amazing question, as it, because 90% of the time we're not in this moment when we've been triggered. It's
back,
not
forward.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's why I bring pleasure into my work. So, you know, when I go take people through the process, we circle back into a pleasure state. And by pleasure state, I mean in enlightening the five senses, what you see, feel, hear, and taste, or, you know, what, you know, touching the body and all that kind of stuff, because it brings you back into this now moment and into the reality. Because when you're going through, like, especially when we're doing the sacred screen process, which is the process for rage, we've gone through the rage, we've connected to the rage and what you're angry at, and you're screaming it out, and then we're dropping into guilt, maybe bit of guilt, bit of sorrow, bit of melancholy, or whatever, grief or whatever. They're sobbing it out. And then, you know, I'm not going to leave people into that bloody state of yeah, I'm like, okay, now we can move into pleasure a little bit more. And, you know, and it just helps people know that they are the master of their emotions, and that they are allowed to feel these emotions, and they are allowed to give themselves space for those emotions. But as you said, with those emotions, like the heavier ones and the lighter ones, or the higher vibrational ones, the ones that everyone wants to feel, and I forgot what I was going to say. Oh yeah, they're either in the future or in the past, and you need to bring yourself into the now moment. You need to bring yourself now into the now moment to feel those, to feel the joy, to feel the peace and the groundedness and the anchoredness and all that kind of stuff. Because as you said, the lower ones, I mixed that up there. The ones like grief and sadness and anger and all that kind of anxiety and depression, it's all future past. It's not here right now. And to experience here right now, you have to be in the body. It's all right, you can do mindfulness meditations, but if you're not taking what's going on in this meat suit, then you're missing half of, you know, you're missing half of the moment, because your body's here right now, anchoring you to this earth. So take note, people.
But also, you were starting to talk about pleasure, and I was thinking, actually, just as much as rage and women being angry is frowned upon, and is still, I mean, there's still a getting to grips with women being angry, and we're still not there. So is pleasure. Women enjoying themselves, and it's not just about being joyful and happy, truly feeling pleasure.
Yeah, well, women's pleasure is second best, isn't it? We're not here to, you know, women have been programmed for centuries now that we're here for the pleasure of the man. Our pleasure didn't come into it. What we wanted, what our desires didn't come into it. A woman's sexuality was shamed, demonized, and now a woman's sexuality is sexualized, you know, monetized. Our bodies have been monetized, pornification, you know, and deemed and shamed upon and deemed disgusting and, you know, dirty and all those kind of things. So we're carrying all that, right? I remember growing up and it was just like, Tina, keep your legs crossed and your mind to yourself. That's what my mum used to say to me. And if my hand went down there, my mum would slap my hand away and go, dirty. Do you know what I mean? I'm just like, that's programming that I had, but it's the programming that she had as well. So, you know, doing this, working with pleasure as well, is so opening, because it's allowing you to open up and accept your body on levels that you've been told that you can't accept your body, because your body you've been told that your body actually belongs to someone else. Do you know what I mean?
Well, even the things like dressing, and I know conversations I have with my clients are, you know, can you get nice underwear that makes you feel good? This is not for your partner. This is not for anybody else. And you might still have to wear a work uniform or whatever it is, but it doesn't mean you can't start to make yourself feel good and feel valued.
It's
and
sexy.
I was about to say, and sexy, and just start to lift yourself up, but not for anybody else.
Yeah. This is why women have so much shame around wanting more, because we're told that it's shameful to want more. Do you know what I mean? Like, we get called whores and sluts and all this kind of stuff if we want more sex or want more pleasure in our lives in a sexual kind of way. So it's a real problem in society, and you know, that's why I do the work that I do, and to empower women to say, no, I want more. I want to feel sexy, and I want to wear what I want. I don't care what you say about me. Do you know what I mean? As long as it's coming from a place of empowerment and not a place of validate. I need the validation.
Yes.
Which happens a lot, especially in the online space, in the online kind of coaching space. There's a lot of people put shit out there for validation and not from a place of empowerment, you know. And doing this work, connecting with my pleasure, doing the rage and connecting with pleasure and my body, like through tantric practices and all that kind of stuff. As you know, I've gone from like having the lights off from having sex with people to now showing up online in my lingerie as a big woman. I would never have dreamed that would be a case. Like, I was never, well, maybe if I had a drink, I used to get my boobs out when I was 20, but later in the years, it was just, I was covered up, like in a top like this. I might have a little V-neck on or something, but covered head to toe, no skirts, trousers, top. Because I held so much shame. There was sexual shame, obviously, and, you know, body shame and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. It's really important, especially for women, to connect with their bodies and their sexuality.
When I wanted to, going back again about 15 years, but when I wanted to feel better about myself, lose weight, get fit, but just really boost myself, is when I went for pole dancing lessons. I was plus size. I did have hang-ups about my body, which is why I sought somebody who taught one-to-one, so I didn't have to go into a group, and so I could be taught privately. And I remember that very first session and having to bend over, look through my legs, and she had huge mirrors along the whole wall. And the thoughts and the feeling, I had to close my eyes. I could not do it. And then session after session, my body changed a little bit, but nothing significant. And by the time I could actually look through my legs and see myself from that position and go, you're all right. This is all right. But getting back into my body that way, for me, it was putting the weight on. And just learning that actually I could feel good in my body in a sensual way. Just for me, not for anybody else.
Yeah, exactly. That's so, you know, what you're saying there about you doing it for yourself and no one else. And that's the kind of journey that I've been on for the last 10 years. Like, I used to be quite, I was a man drama, and it was just everything that I was doing, it was to get attention from men, because that validated my low sense of self-worth. If I didn't have an attention of a man, it meant I wasn't worth anything. It meant I wasn't lovable, or, you know, I wasn't attractive and all those kind of things. And then when I started on this journey, I've kind of been celibate, really. And oh, shush you. And I went on a Tantra journey, and a bit like yourself, I first went to a mixed one, and I felt so uncomfortable in there. I don't know, there was a couple of predatory energy that I felt, and I was like, I don't feel safe in this space. So I didn't, and this was like 7-8 years ago. So I was like, no, it's not for me. Tantra is not for me. It's not for me. Not for me. And then I kept getting the message to tap into Tantra, tap into Tantra, tap into Tantra, because I've always been quite a sexual person. And I was just like, and I wanted to release this sexual shame that was making me stay in really toxic relationships, whether it was me being the toxic one or them being the toxic one. It did, again, the polarity of it all. As I said, it's all or nothing with me. And so I found someone, a lady that was teaching Tantra to women, and she'd done solo sessions. And I was just like, job done. And I've never looked back since. Never looked back since. And it's been one of the most rewarding and empowering and healing journeys I've ever been on. And it was definitely the one that I needed to go on. And I mean, obviously I still look in the mirror and I'm like, Jesus Christ, Tina, you need to get on the healthy, like kind of lifestyle now, because my lifestyle was basically I went from working in pubs for 20 hours a day to sitting at home online. And you know what it's like, I'm 45, I've done the menopause. I'm just like, I just want to sit back and relax kind of thing. So my lifestyle needs a lot of work. Like I need to start exercising more and do all that kind of stuff.
Don't we all? Yeah.
Yeah. And but other than that, like when I look in the mirror, I don't have, because I never used to look in mirrors. I hated what I saw. I'd look at my face, but I wouldn't look at my body. And then, I went on the Tantra journey, and all of a sudden I'm sitting in front of the mirror with my legs crossed or my legs open and just giving myself full body forgiveness and love. And it was for me, it was for me. And I'm just done it all for myself. I love walking around in underwear. I do little strip teases on myself, slap my own ass, you sexy bitch, things like that. Will I want a relationship in the future? I don't know. I don't know if I want someone in my space right now. I don't want someone in my space right now. The thought of sharing my space with someone is like, not that I'm saying they're going to move in or anything, but I just mean my space in terms of my mental space and emotional space. But maybe in the future, I don't know. But right now it's still a journey for me. But yeah. But my point is I understand exactly what you're saying about the body journey being for you and not for the exhibition or for the validation. So yeah.
I think off the back of that as well, it's also this, my biggest bit of learning, and certainly since coming into the coaching field, has been how more pleasure in every single sense of that word. Mm-hmm. So we're back to the 5 senses again, can boost your business. So just as much as going back and doing all that healing inner child work, that having that pleasure and feeling good, therefore the way you show up for yourself and the ripple effect for your clients and put yourself out there has a whole different energy to it.
Well, when you're doing with pleasure, you're allowing yourself to receive on a level that you've never received before. You're putting yourself first. Do you know what I mean? Because you're in that moment. You're in that moment, literally practicing foreplay with your reality. Do you know what I mean? Because you're really kind of savoring everything in your reality in that moment. That is pleasure. So, and it really kind of taps into like the quantum field. If you think in terms of manifestation, it taps into the quantum field of the emotions and the feelings and all the kind of things that you want to experience when you achieve the outside results. Do you know what I mean? Because most people want to experience the freedom, they want to experience the peace, they want to experience the groundedness and the stability, and you get that from experienced pleasure, however that may look for you. It might be walking in a park, it might be just sat there, it might be having a tub of Ben and Jerry's ice cream, binge watching something on Netflix, whatever it might be for you, take that time. Or it could be like, you know, sensuously getting yourself dressed in the morning, putting on your favorite lipstick really slowly, brushing your hair and gazing in the mirror, whatever that is for you, and just loving that feeling, really feeling what the bristles of the brush feels like on your head as it comes down, and what your hair feels like on your face. Just bringing it in those just 5-minute moments throughout your day will change your goddamn life.
And I'm so glad you said it as 5-minute moments.
Yeah.
And that feels like a really good place to say to you, we've done a lot of talking. We've got from literally one end of the emotions to the other.
We have, haven't we?
We have. Is there anything you haven't said that you would like to share?
I don't think so. I think, I mean, my thing is, you've got to feel to heal, but you've also got to feel to create. Like we were talking about pleasure there. It's there. People's expression is the bridge between healing and expansion, which is where all the places that they want to go. So don't be scared to feel, my loves. That's all I want to say.
Tina, how can people find out more about you and more about working with you?
So yeah, you can find me on Facebook at Tina Eloise. I've also got a group called the Sacred Scream Sisterhood, and I have monthly events called the Sacred Scream Ceremony, where we work through our sacred rage and move it through into pleasure, like I spoke about on here. So yeah, just follow me on there.
We will drop all your links into the show notes.
Yeah. And I've also got like a download that they can have a look around the witch, bitch, mother, sister and whore wounds, and to see how it's showing up in their life and business and stuff. So I might drop that down for them as well.
Amazing. Yeah. This has been fantastic. I've loved it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I could talk to you for hours, love.
We'll have to find a reason for you to come back. Yay! We'll have to find another conversation.
Yeah. Awesome.
Brilliant. Tina, thank you.
You're welcome.